holding on to stress.
Right.
Even way after whatever caused it is over. Like your shoulders are always tight, or maybe your heart just like takes off racing at the smallest thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what we're gonna like dive deep into today.
Okay.
How trauma messes with us
Right.
physically, not just, up in our heads.
Mhm.
We're exploring this book.
Okay.
The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel Kolk.
Yes.
He's like a super big name in the whole trauma world.
He really is like a leading expert, been studying this for over 30 years. And this book, it's like everything he's learned all brought together.
That's cool.
He makes all that hard science make sense, but also like connects it to what it actually feels like to live with trauma, day to day.
I think that's what really hooked me reading this book.
Yeah.
It's not just about how trauma, screws you up mentally.
Right.
It's like our bodies get in on the act too, and not always in obvious ways.
That's the big takeaway. The body keeps the score. That's the core idea. Even if in your head you're like, I'm over it, moving on.
Yeah.
Your body might still be acting like danger's right around the corner.
So it's not just all in our minds then, our bodies are part of the story too.
Oh, absolutely. Think about, your heart pounding after you almost get in a car accident, or, how your muscles get all tense after a crazy day.
Yeah.
Those are physical reactions.
Yeah.
And what Dr. Kolk shows us is how trauma kind of cranks these responses way up.
Okay.
Your body's on high alert all the time, like even when you're safe,
So how does that work? Like inside us? Does trauma change the way our brains function or something?
Yeah, it really does. The book digs into 3 main parts of the brain that trauma really messes with.
Okay.
First, there's this thing called the thalamus.
Never heard of that.
We could think of it like the control center for your senses, right?
Oh, okay.
Trauma can make it super sensitive.
Huh?
Like imagine a car backfiring, just a loud bang. For someone with PTSD, their thalamus might be like, that's a gunshot. Full-on fear response, even though it's just a car.
Whoa, so like regular everyday sounds could feel threatening.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Then there's the amygdala. Think of that as your brain's alarm system.
Okay.
Trauma sets that alarm off way too easily. It's like stuck on high.
Always on edge.
Exactly. Can't relax. Your brain's always looking out for danger, even when there's none.
No wonder folks with trauma are always exhausted. Their brains are working overtime. But what about the logical part of our brain? Doesn't that kick in eventually and be like, chill out, it's fine?
You're talking to the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
That's the part that handles thinking things through and making decisions.
Right.
Problem is, trauma can actually shut that part down. It's like it gets hijacked.
Really?
Hard to think clearly. Emotions are all over the place. More likely to just react without thinking.
So basically, trauma just throws our whole brain out of whack. Makes sense why it's so hard to just get over it if your brain is literally wired differently because of what happened.
Right. That's why just talking about your problems, like in regular therapy,
Yeah.
it helps, but sometimes it's not enough.
Makes sense.
Dr. Kolk, he says we got to work with the body too, not just the mind.
Okay, so then how do we heal from trauma if it's not just all mental? What does that even look like? So if just talking it out isn't always enough,
Right.
what are some of the things Dr. Kolk suggests, like other ways to heal?
He talks about a bunch of different methods, actually.
Right.
One he's really into is yoga.
Oh, interesting. So like getting all bendy helps with trauma.
Or not just any yoga.
Ah.
It's about like really connecting with your body
Okay.
and feeling safe like inside yourself.
That makes sense. But how does that like actually help with trauma?
Remember how we were talking about how trauma puts you in that fight or flight mode?
Yeah, like always on edge.
Exactly. So trauma-informed yoga, what it does is it flips the switch to your parasympathetic nervous system.
That's a mouthful.
Basically, it's your body's chill out mode.
Yeah.
Rest and digest, So it's calming down those stress responses.
So it's like telling your body, it's okay to relax, like you're safe now.
Exactly.
Cool. What about mindfulness? I hear that can be good for trauma too, but I don't really get how.
Mindfulness, it goes along with the yoga. It's about being present in the moment,
Right.
noticing what you're thinking and feeling, but not getting like carried away by it.
Okay.
You know how trauma can bring up all those bad memories, those flashbacks?
Yeah.
Mindfulness helps you create some space between those thoughts and like what you do about them.
More control.
Exactly.
So it's not like pretending the bad stuff didn't happen.
No, it's more like you notice it, but you don't let it take over.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
You become aware, but you're not a slave to those thoughts.
Gotcha.
Then there's this thing called EMDR.
Right. That's the eye movement one, right?
Yep. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
I remember you mentioning it.
Yeah.
Something about like moving your eyes back and forth.
It's called bilateral stimulation.
Sounds kind of technical.
Basically, you think about the trauma while you're moving your eyes.
Really?
Sounds weird, but it works. Helps your brain process the memories in a new way.
Interesting. So it's not like reliving the trauma over and over.
No.
Just kind of like shifting how your brain deals with it.
Exactly. Safe environment, no need to go into every gory detail.
That's good.
Powerful stuff for a lot of people.
Ah, cool.
Then you got neurofeedback. That's like training your brain directly.
Sounds super high tech.
It is. Basically, you wear this cap with sensors. They read your brainwaves.
Wow.
You do something simple, like watch a movie or play a game.
Okay.
And you get feedback, like through sounds or pictures. And that teaches you to change your brainwaves.
So you can like calm your brain down on purpose?
Yep. Train it to be more balanced, more resilient.
Awesome. Like a workout for your brain.
I like that. And the cool thing is, it targets the specific parts that are messed up from trauma.
Oh, wow. So it's really personalized.
You got it. Dr. Van der Kolk,
Yeah.
He's all about finding what works best for you.
Right. Like a custom toolkit for healing.
Exactly. He also loves creative stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Art therapy, music, writing, even theater. Great ways to get those emotions out, tell your story without having to use words.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially if it's something too hard to even talk about.
Absolutely.
But we can't forget about other people, right? Like connection, relationships, that stuff's got to be important too.
So important. And Dr. Van der Kolk really stresses that a lot of trauma, it starts in relationships.
Like betrayal or feeling abandoned.
Yeah, so healing often means healing those relationship wounds too.
It's like they say, you heal in community.
Right. You don't have to go through it alone.
So finding good people, building healthy relationships, that's part of it too.
Totally. He talks about building trust, respect, empathy.
Yeah.
Those are the foundations.
Makes you feel safe and connected, right?
Exactly. So important after going through something traumatic.
All this sounds great, but I gotta imagine healing from trauma, it's not like a straight line, right? There's gotta be ups and downs.
You're absolutely right.
It's a process.
A journey. Yeah, not a quick fix.
Takes time.
It does.
And Dr. Van der Kolk, he gets that, right?
Oh yeah, he emphasizes that.
Good.
It's not about erasing the past.
Yeah.
It's about learning to live with it.
Right, and move forward.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all these different ways to heal from trauma.
Right.
But Dr. Van der Kolk, he also says that our systems, society as a whole, we need to change too.
He does.
To better support people who've gone through trauma.
Yeah.
What are some of his ideas about that, like the bigger picture stuff?
Oh yeah, that's a huge part. The book, it's not just about what we do as individuals, it's about how we, as a whole society, deal with trauma.
Okay, so what are some of the things he thinks are messed up about how we approach trauma? Where are we falling short?
Well, one thing he really criticizes is how much we rely on medication
Oh, yeah.
is the main way to treat trauma.
Okay.
I mean, meds can help,
Right, to manage.
yeah, with the really tough symptoms, but they don't actually fix the root problem.
Yeah, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg or something,
Exactly. He also points out that even talk therapy,
which we've talked about.
yeah, even that can have limitations. Sometimes talking about it just isn't enough to get at the really deep stuff.
The physical and emotional stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You need those other approaches, the ones that work with the whole mind-body connection.
Which makes so much more sense now after learning how trauma affects literally your brain and nerves.
Right. It's
Okay.
not just a mental thing.
Okay, so what else does Dr. Van der Kolk say needs to change?
One thing that really bugs him is the labels we put on people
Oh, yeah.
who've experienced trauma,
Like what?
calling them broken or disordered.
Right, there's something inherently wrong with them.
Exactly. He says we got to stop doing that. We need to see trauma as a normal reaction
Okay.
to something really bad happening.
A normal reaction to an abnormal situation, kind of.
Right. It's like instead of saying, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
We should be asking, what happened to you?
That's a huge difference,
Yep.
just in how you approach the whole thing.
It really is. And that leads into one of his big ideas, which is about creating what he calls trauma-informed communities.
I've heard that phrase, but I'm not sure I really get it. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's about creating spaces where people are aware of the effects of trauma
Okay.
and they're sensitive to the needs of people who've gone through it.
So, teachers knowing how to spot signs of trauma in their students?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or doctors and nurses offering care that doesn't accidentally re-traumatize someone.
Wow, that's a lot. Like, it would have to be everywhere, every part of society.
It's a big change, yeah. But Dr. Vanderkolk thinks it's super important.
If we want to be a society that actually heals and supports people, yeah.
Exactly. And it's not just about the big systems. It's also about how we treat each other, person to person.
So what can we do, like, in our everyday lives to help make that happen?
Honestly, just learning about trauma, that's a huge first step.
Yeah, educating ourselves.
The more you understand it,
The better you can support yourself and others.
exactly. We can also speak up for better policies, support organizations that are doing good work,
Right? Use your voice.
or even just say something when you see someone being treated unfairly.
Yeah, it all adds up.
It really does.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, the most important thing to remember,
from the book.
is that healing is possible.
Even after really bad stuff.
Absolutely.
What's, like, the one thing you really want people to take away from all this about trauma and healing?
I think it's this. Trauma doesn't mean you're weak.
Yeah, it could happen to anyone.
Exactly. It's a natural response to something awful.
Not something to be ashamed of.
No way.
Yeah.
The more we understand that, the better we can all be there for each other.
It's all about empathy, right?
Yeah, creating a world where people feel safe and understood, even after going through something hard.
I gotta say, this deep dive, it's been a real eye-opener.
It's a powerful book for sure.
Lots to think about, both for myself and for, like, how I interact with the world.
And if you're out there listening
Yeah,
and you're dealing with trauma,
yeah.
just know you're not alone.
There's help out there.
There is, and there are people who care.
It gets better.
It does. Healing is possible.
So important to remember that.
Reach out for support, be kind to yourself, and keep believing that you can heal.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into The Body Keeps the Score.
It's been my pleasure.